I mean, he's so blatantly stupid. He's a punk, he's a dog, he's a pig, he's a con, a bullshit artist, a mutt who doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a national disaster. He's an embarrassment to this country.
Robert De Niro snapped at 81, before finally revealing the 5 actors he absolutely hated working with. Known for his intensity on screen, De Niro pulled no punches off it either, slamming some co-stars as unprofessional, phony, and even a total nightmare. These aren't just petty feuds, they're battle scars from decades in Hollywood. You'll be stunned by the names he called out. Mickey Rourke. On the surface, Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro should have been a powerhouse duo. 2 method-driven actors, both known for their intensity, commitment, and volatility on screen. When they starred opposite each other in Alan Parker's psychological horror noir Angel Heart, 1987, audiences were treated to a haunting descent into madness and mysticism. But behind the scenes, their dynamic was anything but harmonious. What might have been the start of a powerful collaboration quickly unraveled into a decades-long feud marked by silence, grudges, and harsh words. During the production of Angel Heart, Rourke claims the rift between them became clear almost immediately. Despite both actors being praised for their dedication to craft, De Niro drew a hard line early on. According to Rourke, De Niro told him bluntly, "I think it's better if we don't talk." That single sentence set the tone for the rest of their working relationship, if it could even be called that. For the duration of the shoot, De Niro allegedly kept a deliberate distance from his co-star, avoiding off-camera interactions entirely. For a method actor like Rourke, who thrives on connection and immersion, the cold shoulder wasn't just personal, it was professionally stifling. Rourke didn't forget, and he certainly didn't forgive. In the years that followed, the animosity simmered beneath the surface. Rourke, once considered the next Brando, saw his career veer off course in the 90s, plagued by personal demons, battles with the industry, and a detour into boxing. De Niro, meanwhile, remained a Hollywood institution, racking up accolades and roles, continuing to work with elite directors and commanding projects of prestige. Their paths never crossed again on screen. At least, not directly. Then came The Irishman. Martin Scorsese's long-gestating mob epic, released in 2019, reunited De Niro with Al Pacino and Joe Pesci. It was a grand cinematic event, a late-career high point for its stars. But for Rourke, it was a bitter reminder of the grudge that had never healed. He publicly accused De Niro of orchestrating his exclusion from the cast. According to Rourke, he had been in discussions with the film's casting director about a small role. That conversation, he claimed, was abruptly cut short after she reportedly came back with a damning message. "Robert De Niro said he refuses to work with you." That, for Rourke, was the final insult. He didn't hold back when addressing the issue in interviews. Far from being diplomatic or restrained, Rourke's words were searing. "That little punk-ass De Niro," he once fumed. "He's the reason I wasn't in The Irishman." In another interview, he unleashed one of the most graphic insults ever publicly directed at a fellow actor. "Every time I look him in the face, I look right through his asshole." For Rourke, this wasn't about a missed opportunity. It was about dignity, about being denied a seat at the table not because of talent or availability, but because of a grudge stretching back over 30 years. While De Niro has largely chosen not to address the feud publicly, his silence only seems to deepen the rift. In Hollywood, where reputation is currency, even an unspoken blacklist can have devastating effects. Rourke, who made a critically acclaimed comeback with The Wrestler in 2008, has continued to work steadily in independent films and international projects, but he's never been fully re-embraced by the same system that once hailed him as a genius. And to him, De Niro's shadow looms large over that trajectory. The irony is stark. 2 actors famed for their ability to portray inner torment and fractured masculinity, entrenched in a real-life conflict rooted in silence, ego, and pride. Rourke, raw and unfiltered, has made it clear that his feelings aren't just rooted in professional exclusion. They come from a deeper sense of betrayal. He once said in an interview, "I looked up to him when I was starting out. He was one of my heroes." The pain, it seems, comes not just from being snubbed, but from being snubbed by someone he once admired. The Rourke-De Niro feud remains one of Hollywood's most bitter and unresolved rivalries, less a war of words than a prolonged silent standoff occasionally punctuated by Rourke's explosive commentary. And with both men in their 70s, a reconciliation seems increasingly unlikely. If anything, their mutual silence continues to speak volumes. In an industry built on image, alliances, and reinvention, Rourke has chosen confrontation over contrition, and De Niro, in his own way, has returned the favor with indifference. For better or worse, Angel Heart remains their only shared screen time, a haunting, unsettling film that may be the perfect monument to a relationship defined by ghosted conversations and a decades-long grudge. Jerry Lewis. During the making of The King of Comedy, 1982, a film that would later be hailed as a darkly prophetic satire on fame and obsession, tensions between the two leading men, Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis, reached a boiling point behind the scenes. Directed by Martin Scorsese, the film cast De Niro as Rupert Pupkin, an unhinged, aspiring comedian obsessed with late-night talk show fame, and Lewis as Jerry Langford, the jaded television host who becomes Pupkin's target. Their on-screen dynamic, intense, uncomfortable, and psychologically charged, was matched, perhaps even surpassed, by the real-life friction simmering off-camera. According to production insiders and later admissions by Jerry Lewis himself, the relationship between Lewis and De Niro was marked by open hostility. "We hated each other," Lewis confessed in a brutally honest interview years later, adding that the working environment, while artistically fruitful, was emotionally taxing. He described De Niro as methodical to the point of alienation, often staying in character between takes. While this immersive method had earned De Niro critical acclaim in films like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, it didn't sit well with the old-school Lewis, who had come from a different tradition of performance, one rooted in vaudeville energy, improvisation, and direct connection with the audience. The tension stemmed not only from personal incompatibilities, but also from radically different approaches to the craft. Lewis, accustomed to spontaneity and instinctual performance, was reportedly frustrated by De Niro's brooding intensity and his tendency to retreat inward. In contrast, De Niro viewed Lewis as dismissive and overly controlling, particularly in scenes that required emotional nuance. Crew members recall frequent cold silences between the two men on set, broken only when absolutely necessary. At one point, Lewis allegedly asked Scorsese to direct De Niro to just act, instead of analyzing everything into the ground. One particularly fraught scene, when De Niro's character accosts Lewis's Langford on a public sidewalk, was said to have spilled into real anger. De Niro, committed to the discomfort of the moment, tried provoking Lewis in unscripted ways. Lewis, known for his professionalism, did not appreciate the surprise tactics and later claimed that De Niro had crossed the line between method acting and disrespect. "I told him, 'Don't ever do that to me again,'" Lewis said in a retrospective interview. "He was making me feel unsafe, and I don't like unsafe." There were also deeper psychological undercurrents at play. Lewis, by then a living legend, had long occupied the kind of pedestal that De Niro's Rupert Pupkin so desperately longed to climb. It created an eerie meta-parallel between their roles and reality, Lewis playing the weary icon who just wanted to be left alone, and De Niro portraying the hungry outsider who wouldn't take no for an answer. The role reversal was poignant, and perhaps too close to home for both men. Despite the behind-the-scenes animosity, The King of Comedy emerged as one of the most daring films of the 1980s. Critics initially struggled with its tone, bleak, awkward, and defiantly unglamorous, but over time, it gained cult status and widespread recognition as a prophetic examination of celebrity culture and media obsession. De Niro's performance was lauded for its unsettling depth, while Lewis was praised for his restrained, dramatic turn, a departure from his usual comedic persona. Still, neither actor looked back fondly on the experience. De Niro rarely spoke about it in interviews, offering only terse comments about how it was a tough shoot. Lewis, on the other hand, was more candid. "I've worked with difficult people," he once said, "but never someone who made me question whether the movie was worth the misery." And while he acknowledged that De Niro was a brilliant actor, he made it clear the admiration stopped there. In the decades since, film scholars and biographers have reflected on the fraught dynamic between De Niro and Lewis as emblematic of two eras of Hollywood colliding, the golden age of entertainment clashing with the postmodern, psychologically driven era of 1970s and 1980s cinema. Their mutual contempt, paradoxically, may have contributed to the electric tension that makes the king of comedy so unforgettable. It remains a testament to the paradox of artistic collaboration, how two performers who couldn't stand each other could nevertheless create something enduring, something that pierced the heart of American fame and desperation. Marlon Brando. When The Score, 2001, began production, it carried the weight of history. For the first time ever, two acting giants, Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando, would appear on screen together in a full-length feature. The anticipation was enormous. Brando, though far past his physical and professional prime, remained a legendary figure, a symbol of raw emotional acting that had revolutionized Hollywood. De Niro, one of his most acclaimed successors, had built a career on similar intensity and depth. The prospect of seeing both men share scenes electrified film buffs and critics alike. But behind the camera, the mood was far less harmonious. Directed by Frank Oz, better known for his comedic work on films like What About Bob and Bowfinger, and his long history as the puppeteer behind Yoda and Miss Piggy. The Score aimed to be a taut, stylish heist film. The script was tight, the cast was strong, and the pairing of De Niro and Brando promised gravitas. Yet from the outset, tension flared, specifically between Brando and Oz. Brando, known for his unpredictability and disdain for authority in his later years, quickly took issue with Oz's direction. He found Oz's style overbearing, too controlling, too rigid for his liking. Sources close to the production reported that Brando refused to take direction from Oz outright, at one point mocking him openly and calling him Miss Piggy in reference to his work with the Muppets. Brando's provocations weren't limited to words. He began refusing to show up for certain rehearsals if Oz was present, and allegedly demanded that someone else, anyone else, direct him in his scenes. This volatile atmosphere placed Robert De Niro in an unexpectedly awkward position. Known for his quiet professionalism and low-drama demeanor on set, De Niro was suddenly forced to play diplomat. He respected Brando. After all, Brando had set the standard that De Niro himself had followed for decades. But De Niro also respected the director and the need to finish the film. In this cinematic storm, he became the reluctant go-between, trying to keep the project from derailing entirely. According to insiders, De Niro stepped in to help facilitate communication. When Brando refused to be directed by Oz, De Niro would relay Oz's instructions in a way Brando could tolerate. On more than one occasion, De Niro would talk Brando through a scene privately, gently translating the director's vision into something the mercurial actor could work with. It was a strange, almost parental role reversal. Brando, once the brooding innovator and rebellious godfather of method acting, now needed coaxing just to get through a take. And it was De Niro, long considered the heir to Brando's legacy, who had to play peacekeeper. Despite the difficulties, the film was completed, and surprisingly, the final product does not show the behind-the-scenes strain. On screen, Brando's character, Max, is sly and composed, playing off De Niro's Nick with a kind of elegant ease. There's no hint of the behind-the-scenes friction, no trace of the fact that much of Brando's performance was essentially directed by proxy. But the scars from that tension were real. Frank Oz, while diplomatic in interviews, later admitted the experience was one of the most challenging of his career. He confirmed that Brando refused to be directed by him and that, in some instances, he had to step aside while others guided Brando through his scenes. Oz, who had directed complex personalities before, never fully reconciled with the experience. He described Brando as brilliant but impossible, charming but cruel. For Oz, it was a case of brilliance colliding with chaos, and De Niro stuck in the middle. What's telling is that De Niro never spoke publicly about the discord in detail. True to his reputation, he remained largely silent, letting the work speak for itself. But those who were there noted the strain the situation placed on him. He wasn't just starring in the film, he was holding it together. For Brando, the score would be his final theatrical film. He passed away just 3 years later, in 2004. For De Niro, it was another entry in a long line of complex projects, though perhaps one that came with a unique emotional burden. To work with Brando, his idol, his predecessor, should have been a crowning moment. Instead, it became a test of patience and professionalism. Joaquin Phoenix. When Joker, 2019, entered production, it wasn't just another comic book movie. Under the direction of Todd Phillips, best known at the time for comedies like The Hangover, this was a bold, character-driven reimagining of the infamous DC villain. Set in a grim, decaying version of Gotham City, the film aimed to tell a raw, unsettling origin story about a man discarded by society. With Joaquin Phoenix cast as Arthur Fleck, a mentally ill loner who gradually descends into chaos, and Robert De Niro playing Murray Franklin, a late-night talk show host modeled after Johnny Carson, the production brought together two radically different acting titans and two drastically different working styles. And it didn't take long for that difference to create friction. Phoenix is known for his immersive, deeply internalized method of preparation. He's notoriously private on set, often staying in character between takes and avoiding unnecessary social interaction. His process is intuitive, emotional, and deeply personal. In contrast, De Niro, one of the most iconic figures in American film, comes from a different school of thought. Though also method-trained, De Niro values structure, discipline, and preparation. One of his hallmarks is the traditional table read, where the cast gathers in advance of filming to read through the script together, get a feel for rhythm, tone, and character dynamics. De Niro, true to form, requested a full table read of Joker before production began. To him, it was a standard, even essential step. Phoenix, however, refused. Todd Phillips, caught between the two, recalled the situation with some discomfort. According to the director, De Niro was adamant. "Tell him he's an actor and he's got to be there," he told Phillips. For De Niro, it wasn't a matter of ego, it was about professionalism. But for Phoenix, the demand felt intrusive. He didn't want to rehearse. He didn't want to sit at a table and read lines. His approach was built on spontaneity and emotional rawness, not rehearsal room familiarity. This fundamental clash of philosophies caused tension on set. Phoenix reportedly avoided De Niro during the early stages of filming, keeping his distance both on and off camera. It wasn't outright hostility, but there was an uncomfortable energy between them. For De Niro, used to working with peers who respected traditional prep, Phoenix's refusal may have come off as arrogance. For Phoenix, De Niro's insistence may have felt like a challenge to his creative integrity. Eventually, a compromise was reached, sort of. Phoenix ultimately agreed to meet De Niro for a private script read at the actor's Manhattan office. It wasn't the full table read De Niro had requested, but it was something. According to Phillips, the meeting was brief and not particularly warm. Phoenix read through the script in a manner that was, by many accounts, distant and unengaged. But afterward, something shifted. The two men seemed to come to a quiet understanding. On set, despite the earlier awkwardness, the dynamic between Phoenix and De Niro gradually improved. De Niro, playing the slick old-school TV host, brought a poised charisma to his scenes. Phoenix, unraveling on camera with unsettling intensity, delivered a career-defining performance. Their key scene together, when Arthur Fleck is invited onto Murray Franklin's show, was electric. Tense, uncomfortable, and ultimately explosive, it captured the essence of the film's themes: alienation, recognition, humiliation, and revenge. And in that pivotal moment, when Joker, seated across from Franklin, delivers the line, "What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him?" there is no sign of off-screen tension. There's only a chilling, pitch-perfect exchange between two acting powerhouses who, despite their differences, found a way to meet in the middle when it mattered most. Todd Phillips would later describe both actors with admiration, acknowledging that the early tension wasn't rooted in ego, but in devotion to craft. Phoenix was crafting something fragile and complex. De Niro, with decades of experience, was trying to ensure the ensemble was cohesive. In the end, both were right in their own way, and the result was a film that exceeded all expectations. Joker went on to become a global phenomenon, earning over $1 billion worldwide and garnering 11 Academy Award nominations. Phoenix won the Oscar for Best Actor. And De Niro, though not nominated, was widely praised for his subtle, incisive performance, playing a man who embodied the media's polished mask in a story about society's discarded souls. The on-set discomfort ultimately became a footnote, a reminder of how creative friction, when managed, can lead to brilliance. De Niro and Phoenix may never work together again, but for a brief moment, their opposing energies collided in just the right way. One insisted on structure, the other demanded freedom, and together they created a cinematic powder keg. Graham Norton. Robert De Niro is widely regarded as one of the greatest actors of his generation, a performer whose transformative roles and commanding presence have shaped the landscape of modern cinema. But when it comes to off-screen appearances, particularly in the breezy, quick-witted world of late-night television, De Niro has earned a reputation that sharply contrasts with his on-screen magnetism. Nowhere has this contrast been more plainly described than by British talk show host Graham Norton, who once called De Niro one of television's most difficult guests. Norton, known for his infectious humor and ability to make even the most guarded celebrities loosen up, did not deliver the comment with malice. In fact, he offered it with a mix of admiration and exasperation. "He's not a storyteller," Norton said. "He's a benign presence." That seemingly polite phrasing, however, masks the awkward challenge De Niro presents to hosts accustomed to energetic banter, anecdotal punchlines, and carefully timed audience reactions. Unlike actors who lean into charisma and self-promotion during interviews, De Niro brings a different energy. Quiet, deliberate, and often reserved to the point of being monosyllabic, he doesn't charm the crowd with tales of misadventures or zingers about his co-stars. Instead, he often appears to be enduring the process, gracious perhaps, but never entirely comfortable. This has baffled and frustrated many a host, especially those who rely on rhythm and storytelling to keep their shows engaging. When De Niro appeared on The Graham Norton Show, expectations were high. Here was a two-time Oscar winner, a living legend, seated alongside other guests more eager to trade jokes and tales. But the segment turned awkward quickly. While his fellow guests riffed and laughed with ease, De Niro remained quiet, offering clipped answers and little emotional variation. Norton, skilled at warming up even the most reticent guests, tried several times to draw him out, with little success. The audience, eager for a glimpse of the fire and brilliance De Niro shows in films, instead witnessed a man who seemed almost puzzled by the format itself. It's not that De Niro is rude or aloof, he's just profoundly uninterested in performance when not playing a character. Friends and collaborators have long noted that he's intensely private, rarely offering glimpses into his personal life or his thoughts outside of his work. In interviews, he is guarded, often slow to respond, and rarely gives sound bites. That same inward intensity that makes his acting so compelling becomes a liability in a format that thrives on charm and spontaneity. Graham Norton's experience wasn't unique. Other talk show hosts, including Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, and even David Letterman, have all expressed varying degrees of difficulty when interviewing De Niro. Letterman once quipped that talking to De Niro was like interviewing a turtle. Kimmel, usually unshakable in his comedic rhythm, visibly strained to create laughs during his interview with De Niro, relying more on admiration than interaction. This recurring discomfort points to a fundamental truth about De Niro. He doesn't view the talk show circuit as an extension of performance. To him, acting is sacred, internal, and character-driven. Publicity, by contrast, is mechanical, a necessary nuisance to support the project at hand. While some actors use interviews to build their brand or cultivate a relatable persona, De Niro has always resisted that. In fact, his rare willingness to appear on such shows usually has more to do with loyalty to a director, a project, or a co-star than any personal interest in the spotlight. Yet, there's also something admirable about De Niro's stubborn authenticity. In an age when nearly every celebrity is a polished product, trained to entertain even off-script, De Niro remains unchanged. He doesn't adapt his personality to fit the couch. He doesn't fake enthusiasm. What audiences see is what they get. A man deeply committed to his craft and largely indifferent to the circus that surrounds it. For Graham Norton, whose show thrives on chemistry and energy, De Niro was an enigma. Respected, yes, but unyielding. A benign presence, Norton repeated, almost amused by the understatement. That label, while gently worded, captured something deeper. De Niro is not difficult in the usual sense. He's simply immovable, emotionally sealed off unless he's in character. He doesn't want to play himself on TV. He's already spent a lifetime playing everyone else. What do you think about the 5 actors that Robert De Niro hates the most? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.